Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Metro Board activities for November 7th, 2024. Thank you for joining us today. Chair Santos is under the weather today, so I'm chairing today's meeting, and alternate Director Worth is filling in on her behalf. Before we begin, I'll ask our Chief Safety and Readiness Officer, Teresa Impasado, to please provide today's safety contact. Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the event of an alarm activation, we'll exit this conference room via the glass doors and proceed into the lobby where we'll await further instructions from our security team. If we are instructed to exit the building, I'll lead the group to our designated assembly point as the security team will coordinate with first responders. There's an AED located at the entry desk, and in the event of an emergency, I'll retrieve the AED and render aid while awaiting emergency services. Lastly, restrooms are located in the vestibule area adjacent to this conference room. While rare, medical emergencies do occur in the Metro system. Here are a few tips if you see a fellow passenger experience medical distress or are experiencing an issue yourself. Call boxes mounted on pylons on station platforms enable our customers to report emergencies to the station manager. Please note where in the station you are if an emergency occurs. Be confident, closed-circuit video cameras cover every area of our stations and monitors are in the station manager's kiosk as well as monitored 24/7 by the Metro Integrated Command and Communication Center. Call boxes on each rail car enable any rider to report an emergency to the train operator who's in constant radio communication with the control center. Bus operators can contact the control center via bus radio for any type of emergency and request help as needed. You can also send a text message to the Metro Transit Police at MyMTPD. QR codes on Metro posters allow you to text MyMTPD directly. And lastly, call 911 and notify the nearest Metro employee of the emergency and provide details. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you, Teresa. Welcome to today's meeting of the Board's Executive Committee. Since this is our first public meeting of the day, I'll ask Ms. Ellison, the Board Corporate Secretary, to please call the roll.
Thank you. Alternate Director Worth.
Present.
Vice Chair Smedberg.
Present.
Vice Chair McAndrew.
Here.
Director Klein.
Present.
Director Hadenlow.
Here.
Director Letourneau.
Present.
Director Drummer.
Present.
Director Martin Proctor.
Good morning.
Mr. Vice Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. We have an agenda before us. If there are no objections or changes to the agenda, hearing none, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Next, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. We have a set of minutes before us from our last public hearing on September 26th and the executive sessions of September 26th and October 24th before us for approval. Do we have any comments or corrections or objections to any of these sets of minutes from the committee members? Hearing and seeing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on our agenda this morning. The Inspector General has submitted the FY24 external audit and single audit. While the committee does not vote on the audit, I'd like to provide Ms. Zamarin and our external auditors this opportunity to review any findings or provide any highlights. Madam IG.
I will begin again. Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Zamarin. I have with me today Valerie Koloman, who is a partner at RSM. Today, we have OIG retained RSM to conduct the 2024 financial statements and the single audit. The main objective of the financial statements audit was to determine whether WMATA's financial statements are free from material misstatements. The main objective of the single audit was to ensure WMATA's use of federal funds is in compliance with the federal program's requirements for how the money can be used. We are pleased to report that RSM issued an unmodified opinion on both audits. In other words, 2 clean audits. I would like to thank our CFO, Yatunde Alamunde, and her staff for all the help and cooperation extended to the OIG and to RSM as part of this work. And that concludes, unless there are any questions from the board.
Any committee members have a question? Well, on behalf of the committee, well, actually on behalf of the board, want to thank you for all the work that you did, and want to acknowledge the WMATA team as well, particularly the CFO's office and others, the cooperation and coordination that has gone on throughout the years. And I believe this is our ninth clean audit. So I think that's something this organization should be really proud of, given where it was 9 years ago. And both your organization and our team really have a lot to do with that. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing there are no further comments or questions on that, thank you. With no further business to come before this committee, we'll stand adjourned, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Letourneau to begin today's Finance and Capital Committee meeting. Mr. Letourneau.
Thank you, Mr. Smedberg, and welcome to today's meeting of the Finance and Capital Committee. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. I'd like to move to approve the agenda as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to the approval of minutes. We have the minutes of our October 24th meeting before us for approval. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have one item on our agenda for today, which is committee approval of a restructured operating subsidy formula for Metro Bus and Metro Rail. This is a really tough topic that has not been addressed in decades because it is a difficult topic, but there's really been extraordinary work done by our staff to work through a lot of changes, solicit tremendous input from our jurisdictional partners. And I know that work has continued right up until now, including board members. So I want to thank everybody who's been involved in helping to bring this forward. We did receive a presentation of this restructured formula at our last meeting. So our purpose for today is to actually go ahead and recommend those changes to the board and move it forward to the full board meeting. So I will turn the floor over to Mr. Webster and Ms. Davis for their presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee and the board. Again, Tom Webster, Executive Vice President, Planning and Performance, joined by Allison Davis and Yetunde Olumide this morning. We're going to be very brief in this presentation, as much of this is the same as we presented last month. But again, we're back here recommending committee and then board approval of the restructured Metro Rail and Metro Bus formulas. This builds on the work of a lot of people over the past year or so to modernize our confusing, out-of-date legacy subsidy allocation formulas to work better for today's mature regional transit network. And again, I just want to thank all who have participated in this. It is a very complicated, long-standing challenge here at Metro and for our region and our funding partners. And there's been a great deal of engagement both among Metro staff and among jurisdictional partners and the board and elected officials. We appreciate all of that very much. Moving forward, Allison's going to cover a few slides briefly here, and then we'll move to the recommendation.
All right. Thanks, Tom. So again, lots of investments are made for Metro, and today we're really focused on that operating subsidy, but here really highlights a lot of the other capital investments that come and how the allocations from a jurisdictional perspective are made. And again, the focus is really that blue box at the bottom on the operating subsidy. So as Tom mentioned, and the chair mentioned as well, the current subsidy formulas really date back decades. So the Metro Rail formula was created in '77, and it was really when we were in a period of expansion, and it was really focused on benefits of development at stations and to riders and non-riders. The Metro Bus formula has two flavors. The regional perspective was mirrored on how we approached bus, and so how do we think about Metro Bus investments from a regional perspective, and then there's the subsequent non-regional service, which is really the localized at a jurisdictional level. As Tom mentioned, we worked hand in hand with a lot of people who know the subsidy formulas and have struggled with them over the years to really highlight what are those key challenges and what is it, how do we want to solve it or try to resolve some of those challenges. And so a lot of these challenges that are highlighted here really reflect what we heard from our jurisdictional partners, and just a couple of them. One, neither in the current context, the bus or rail formulas really don't have a direct relationship between service levels and subsidy paid. When we adjust service, ultimately that means it's not clear what's going to happen to the subsidy. Some people see it go up a lot more than they're seeing service changing in their jurisdiction. And then honestly, there are a lot of cumbersome and not really legible or clear variables that we use in the current in the current formulas, and it makes it really hard to understand what they are and what they mean. So we, as any good planning staff does, we set up some goals as to how we really wanted to address this. And so these are the key ones, essentially legibility, predictability, tying it to service, and really thinking about how those investments are made from a regional perspective. Okay, this slide, lots of information, key takeaways. The top half of it is really focused on the Metro Rail changes. The blue show what the existing subsidy is, and that's really revenue off the top, and then that subsidy allocation. The green for Metro Rail is how we've restructured it, really pulling out the different costs, which are system, right? What it costs to maintain or to oversee a Metro Rail system, the infrastructure, the stations, track miles, and then the service, right? So that's kind of that differential. Metro Bus, bottom half, is the current, again, kind of taking revenue off the top and having those two distributions of service. And then Metro Bus going forward would be, as the restructured, is again having a system, but having service. There's one flavor of Metro Bus. A service hour is a service hour regardless of where it operates. And then how we move that forward. So a couple of new things that are in here from the last time we were here. When we were working on this, as we were restructuring the formula, Virginia requested some changes as to how we sub-allocate within the Commonwealth, and we just wanted to make sure that that's clear to everyone. This does not change how at a state level the allocation of costs are done, but this is within Virginia to really and balance the small cities with the larger counties that are there. So again, these are the three different ways that we're approaching it: 2 for rail, 1 for bus, and just wanted to be clear on that. This and this slide and the next slide start to show kind of how restructured subsidy reallocates the costs between state level and also at a mode level. So on the left side, that's existing formula, the existing 25 approved budget, and it also adds in some of those reimbursable service that we have for bus with the district in Arlington. The middle is the restructured formula, but also approved to that same service level. And then we add in the 2025 Better Bus Network, which is there in yellow. So it just kind of shows that how the distribution slightly changes. Again, this is for 25. So when we come out with the 26 budget later this year, these numbers will change based on new costs and expenses. But wanted to make sure that that is clear, showing that consistency across. And then this helps to break it down at the sub-jurisdictional level. So again, for the green and yellow, this bakes in the changes for the sub-allocation for Virginia. So with that, thank you. And we've had it's been an interesting path to update these, but we are here to ask for board approval, and we're happy to answer questions before that happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will take a moment for questions and start with members of the committee. Are there questions?
I don't see any hand. Oh, Director Klein.
This is not actually a question, it's just a comment. I just want to note that this team before us is also the team that's been working on the Better Bus Network and the FY 25 and 26 budget, and keeping our fiscal house in order so that we get 9 years of clean audits. not to mention all the other things that are going on. And this topic is so complex that I honestly didn't think that we were going to be, we as a region would ever be ready to tackle it. So I just want to commend the team because I'm very impressed that we've reached a resolution. It's a difficult topic. It's complicated. There's a lot going on. And yet here we are with a revised, more transparent, more predictable formula. So thank you.
Dr. Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. In this new formula, we use the Metro Rail ridership survey as one of the inputs to the formula. And I know that as that survey has gone to the field over cycles, we're reaching some limitations in terms of being able to get the data that we need in order to actually have what we feel like is a reliable survey. Just, you know, society is changing and we're still out there like handing out pieces of paper. As we think about, you know, we might still be using this formula like 20 years from now. So do we have any big picture thoughts about how the ridership survey administration might evolve in order to continue to be a reliable input to this formula?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lowe. There are certainly opportunities to modernize the approach to surveys of this type. I'll note this is also the surveys that are, these are also the surveys that are used for our Civil Rights Title VI compliance with the Federal Transit Administration. So there are some rules and regulations that govern the structure of the survey from that perspective. But our team in planning and performance and customer research are looking at what opportunities there are to do things a little bit differently, maybe move away from so much paper, but still have a representative, strong survey that supports the needs of the subsidy allocation as well as our Title VI process. So I think more to come on that in the future, but we recognize the world has changed quite a bit, and the old way of measuring this type of thing may not be as useful going forward.
Yeah, and I think the key thing to emphasize here is just, of course, complying with federal requirements and programs is extremely important, and we should be in compliance. But using the survey as an input to this formula in this way only increases the importance over time of making sure that the data that we're gathering through that survey are good. So I hope that it's a shared regional priority and of everyone at this table, but also a priority of the organization to not forget that we need to make sure that we're getting that we're actually getting reliable data from the survey.
Yeah, and I want to join my name onto what Ms. Klein had to say. I mean, this is a really challenging issue, and it's very complex and political in a way. And all the work you did with our jurisdictional partners, and also we have to acknowledge the board members up here that really did do their work to get to this point as well, particularly our DC board members and what went on there. So thank you for all that you did, you and Valerie both, Tracy.
Paul, it's really kind of you to say so, and I really appreciate that. I'll just reiterate what I said at the beginning of this process, which was that I, like Sarah, actually was not sure that we could do this. Yeah. I want to commend the staff at WMATA for coming up with a formula that follows the design principles that the board as a group agreed on at the beginning. You created a tool to guide the future of this organization that was truly worth fighting for, and I was proud to do it.
I think that's it for comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yeah, and I'll just echo what everybody else has said. The single, I think, most important thing about the formula change is how repeatable it is. in that. And what I mean by that is as we make changes, we know, look, we're not static. We're going to be making changes to this system across the board, rail, bus. And so anything we do is with a formula right now is a point in time, but it has to make sense as you add and as it moves forward. And I think what we've done here is create something that really makes it clear what changes in service actually mean for the operating subsidy. And that is really important for the jurisdictional partners that we have in particular who have to make planning for budget. So echo what everybody said about the great work that was done here. Okay, so if we've concluded discussion, then it is time for a motion to approve the changes as presented. So I will move approval of the changes as presented by the committee. Can I have a second from a member of the committee?
Seconded by Mr. Letourneau. Or I mean, Mr. McAndrew. Sorry.
Okay.
One of those guys.
Seeing no further discussion, I'll ask the board corporate secretary to call a vote.
Chair Letourneau.
Aye.
Vice Chair Klein.
Aye.
Ms. Worth.
Aye.
Mr. McAndrew.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ellison. And with no further business coming before the committee, we stand adjourned, and I will turn the floor over to Mr. Drummer for the Safety and Operations Committee meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Safety and Operations Committee meeting. In normal fashion, our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Seeing and hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to approval of the minutes of our October 24th meeting. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as well. We have one action item on today's agenda. Over the past 26 months, staff has done a great job of keeping the board informed on the comprehensive planning, preparation, analysis, and progress in developing our near-term and visionary Better Bus Network. In this presentation, staff will provide a brief but very informative overview and recommend committee approval of the 2025 Better Bus Network for follow-on approval by the board. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Webster, Mr. Cafiero, and Ms. Davis for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, we're very pleased to be here this morning after a few years of work to bring the recommended approval of the 2025 Better Bus Network to the committee and the board. I'm going to turn this over to Peter Cafiero and Allison to walk through the presentation. And again, thank you for the board's patience and working with us through this. Some of this material was shared last month, so we'll move fairly quickly through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Chair Drummer and members of the committee and the board. We're really excited today to bring this 2025 Better Bus Plan to you. It builds on the draft plan that we brought to the public, to the board first and then the public last spring. But we honestly believe that it is, the public comments actually have led to a better plan. Let's go through to this slide. Our overall goals were to better connect the people in the neighborhoods of this region to where they need to travel to, where data shows they are traveling to, whether or not we've been serving it with Metro, and especially improving access for the region's equity-focused communities. We tried where we were able to provide more frequent and consistent service and to make the system easier to understand for our current customers, potential new customers, and future customers as the region and the network changes. As was mentioned, this has been over a 2-year effort, and during that 2-year effort, we spent almost 6 months in public outreach, which was time-consuming, but I think, and the team thinks, really worth it and resulted in a better plan at the end than we could have ever done just with looking at data. There are many data points on this slide, but the key takeaway that I'd like to emphasize is the variety of the audiences that we've engaged with, which I think has helped us through this process. We've spoken to many of our bus operators who really know these routes intimately and have been very helpful in developing this. We've met, Allison and I and others have had numerous meetings in one-on-one and in larger groups with stakeholders, with elected officials, with community representatives, many public meetings and information sessions, a robust online presence and tools and ways to comment, but also very old school, getting members of the team on the bus, talking to bus customers on the bus. So we knew we received comments from everyone out there affected. This past spring, in that outreach effort, we received over 13,000 comments. Metro staff collectively read and summarized all of those comments. And we've made changes in response to more than half of the routes that we brought out in public last May. Of course, we did need to make sure that we stayed within our FY25 resources and budget. So many of the comments we got were people wanted even more. And we certainly would love to do that, but that's, Allison will talk a little about the future on that. But right now we stayed within our current resources, but being more efficient, we're able to somewhat increase service to our customers within those resources. And overall, we do believe that we've addressed many of the concerns that customers raised in that process. As I mentioned, a lot of our focus was on areas of serving customers who really need our service and making that a priority in particularly low-income areas, but generally trying to provide more off-peak and weekend service coverage, more access to frequent service in general, and better connections, particularly at both ends of the routes, to jobs, to education, to stores, to hospitals, and other locations. The new network on average, for the average area resident, will increase by 5% or more access to jobs and other key destinations in the same amount of time that, whatever time measure you use, it basically brings places closer to you. It increases our frequent service network by 30%, provides new weekend service to 20,000 residents who don't have it now, especially in lower income neighborhoods. And overall, the improvements we estimate could attract nearly 13,000 more daily riders. I'll now turn it over to Allison.
All right, thanks, Peter. So one of the things we did here from reading those 13,000 plus comments was people want more service, right? More frequency, longer span, different, extensions to other places. And so we also have a visionary network, right? And that's what gives us that direction for where we want to go in the future. As resources become available, we'll be able to use that to help figure out where we want to go. So on here, this really kind of highlights, places connecting to having that overnight network, so really connecting to the airport for anyone who tries to get on an 8 a.m. flight on a weekend. Transit's not really an option, so how do we start to create some of those opportunities? Really having a minimum frequency of 30 minutes or better, obviously. So we do have some routes out there right now in the 2025 network that have some weekend times, maybe midday, that is 60 minutes because we had to stay within existing resources. So we have that opportunity to move it forward. And obviously, if we're able to provide more service, better service, we get the opportunity to attract more customers, have more environmental benefits, save more time, and the like. So everyone wants to see this slide again, but on here we wanted to make sure that it was clear. We put this together being resource neutral. So you see at the bottom it is resource neutral, but that doesn't mean it was necessarily resource neutral at a jurisdictional level or even at a sub-jurisdictional level. We wanted to build a network that really provided the service to customers and the region for MetroBus as a whole. So on the left side, we've got in blue, the existing formula and the approved service. In the middle is the restructured formula, still with the approved 25 service. And then it's the restructured formula and the better bus network. So you get to see that some slight changes in allocation between state and sub-jurisdictional entities. And then finally, it took us, it was hard to create this plan, this Better Bus Network as a plan. The level of need to implement this is even that much higher. And we're joined behind us with many of people at Metro who are going to be leading parts of the implementation, because it's going to require people from, we've got the planning and scheduling. Obviously, we need that the schedules to be able to provide operations with the information for the pick and who's doing what, so that they can also be training. We've also obviously got a lot of the communications elements of this, and how do we talk to customers? How do we tell them what the new bus routes will be? Obviously, opportunity for new bus stop flags. And then we have all the work in the background of systems and data, so that we're able to say, you know, from day one, here's what we're seeing, ridership, efficiency, all of that sort of thing. The other element here is also that integration with partner, with other local providers. This is especially relevant in Prince George's County and Montgomery County, because we worked with them to redesign in both counties. So we have sent letters to each of the leads of DOT, the local DOTs, to let them know kind of some of those infrastructure changes we need. But again, this is going to be a really large task to be able to operate and implement this starting in the summer of 2025. So with that, we are here to request your approval of the 2025 Better Bus Network. We also wanted to be clear to everyone who's perhaps paying attention online what all of the information and data that's available. If you want to read through the 13,000 plus comments, they are now online as well. But we did summarize all those and provide responses at a route level as to how we changed, as well as maps, route profiles, and the like. So with that, happy to answer any questions and look forward to the discussion.
So to the team, thank you very, very much. This has been some phenomenal work. You've heard us say it again and again, from the start to the finish. The work you've done here, the depth, the quality, the engagement, the analysis, unmatched, anything I've ever seen. Many of us, board members, have participated in many of the engagement events, and it's something that really draws excitement that Peter talked about. At this point, I'll open the floor to committee members for any comments. Dr. Lowe?
This was another one of those ones that I wasn't sure we could do. But when we started this process, I felt like it really was worth throwing everything we had at trying to do this, because of the opportunity to improve, especially crosstown connections. Everything that we know about what the future of transit is going to be, and where demand is and where ridership needs us to be, was telling us that we needed to do that, and our legacy network could not do that. When I saw the first draft of the revised network, I still wasn't like super excited about whether we were really getting after that potential. I am so impressed by the final set of revisions that were made to the network and where we are now. It is really hard to do a revenue neutral bus network redesign. I just have never heard of something like that. I understand that this is the environment that we're in, but the way that this final network does more with the same amount of resources is incredible. And it's going to better serve the whole region. I'm also excited about the potential that it opens up for investment in the future, but this does something right now and is a win. The final network is so responsive to the feedback that we received, and I'm really appreciative of the team for the way that you listened and the thoughtful network that you're bringing forward now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smedberg.
Thank you. Allison, I was going to ask you what you and Peter were going to do with all your extra time, but you answered that question. Could you just go into a little more detail of what that really looks like for particularly the people, sitting behind you who are going to now implement this?
Sure, we can, and we do. I will preface this that this is the end of the planning, but we will be back to kind of talk through what implementation looks like and what that means. But sure, I can go this one. Okay.
Before actually,
Oh.
if I could just, I mean, one of the things, before you answer, we've been talking, we're not the first people that have done this in terms of agencies around the country. There are many, we've talked to many of them, and particularly ones that are just ahead of us. And one of the things that they recommended that we heard was start thinking about implementation before you're done with the planning, because there's not going to be enough time. If we waited till now, we would be way behind. So collectively, we've been thinking about this for a while. We've had different people that are not Allison and myself focused on that, which is key. So
Absolutely, right. So we do have kind of a program manager to like think through and be pulling all this together. And then it's essentially working within each of one of these columns, categories, to figure out what's needed, and then really push the envelope on how do we move faster to really hit those timelines, right? So from a training perspective, right, we are working to look at the number of routes. There are routes that are in the 25 Better Bus Network that are essentially the same as we have today, right? It does have a new route number, but it is still running down the same streets as it does today. So it's really being able to break out where we need the routes that we really have to focus the training on, as well as opposed to the other ones that are more informational. And so that's the type of stuff that we are really trying to like dig into to better understand where the opportunities are to move things forward faster.
Yeah, and looking through this earlier, that last bullet there in the customer information and communications, given some of these changes that are going to take place, I mean, I'm assuming that's going to be a big part of this implementation, because that's
that is absolutely true. We also realize that people aren't going to necessarily pay attention until
right. Well, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're trying to balance.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're trying to balance when and how, right? Given all the other events and things that are happening between now and next summer, how we start to tease people and get the word out that changes are coming and like what that date is, as opposed to 2 weeks prior, 3 weeks prior, like we're out in force. And I will say that this will continue after implementation, right? It is not just on day one, we're good to go. We're going to have to be out there for some period afterwards as well, making sure that customers know where to go and what to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McAndrew.
Just quick, thank you. This is great work. The bus is the backbone of the system, and it's really important that we get this one right. I would appreciate, offline, if I can get a better sense of understanding of the previous presentation had an outline of changes from FY25, both for formula and then for the Better Bus Network. And the state of Maryland had a $6 million increase between the formula and the Better Bus Network. So it doesn't have to be today, but appreciate an understanding before we vote on this in a couple of weeks for final. Just an understanding in terms of where that plus up is coming from in the state of Maryland. Again, we are happy with the result and the product, just understanding kind of the hours of service and that type of aspect.
yeah, I think it was certainly offline can go into more detail. I would say that it's not simply like I said, some of the routes are unchanged, some of the routes are brand new, but there's a lot of routes that are really erased things and redrew the map. But just some general senses of, for example, Maryland, significantly more service to National Harbor, significantly more off-peak and weekend service in both counties relative to today. So that's the types of things.
Yeah, and for the better, right? So appreciate just an understanding.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Spring?
Just wanted to bring out this point. When I look at this presentation, what I keep coming back to is that one bullet point that you made more than half of the changes to the routes after your May presentation. I think that's totally impressive. There's definitely a public perception that when you bring out plans, it's just a check the box to the public, nothing really changes. And a lot of these routes did change, more than half, and there was so much hard work that you all did to make that happen, reaching out to all the stakeholders and coming back. And I just want to acknowledge that. And we're really excited about the plan. So thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you. Since we've concluded our discussion on this item, I move committee approval of the 2025 Better Bus Network as presented. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Lowe. Any further discussion? Hearing none and seeing none, I would ask the board secretary to call the vote.
Chair Drummer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martin Proctor,
Approved.
Mr. Smedberg,
Aye.
Dr. Haddon-Lowe.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. Again, team, thank you for some just extraordinary work. With no further items to come before the committee today, we stand adjourned. I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Smedberg, who has a request for the board to meet in executive session.
In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions and the federal government. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Lowe. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes
Aye.
have it. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.